How rude am I? I predict that this posture, this thing we do, this thing you, sir, are doing right now, okay, in the future will be regarded as a very laughable artifact of our age. In the same way as you laugh at your father's 8-track tapes and phonographic records, although those have made a big comeback, have they not? Or antiquated, or any antiquated technology. I do believe that in the future, this kind of posture, this sort of thing, they'll call us praying mantises, or they'll make fun of us because we were so thoroughly engaged in these little devices. Our whole world was in a huge 8 inches, right? A huge screen, and it was a touch screen where we could no longer write cogent emails or communicate effectively. But that's okay, because we still had these big screens, and we walked around like this, and you'll tell your children, and there would be parties and groups of people together, and they would all be looking at their device and not talking except for very brief look-ups, temporary conversation, and then immediately right back to it. That's how we lived. And they'll be like, no way. Because they're going to have augmented reality, and that's going to be their world. A world which will be your world sooner than you may like it. A world of augmented reality. A world of vision. A world that you are literally now get this, no longer are you going to live with your apps. You are going to live inside your apps. Think about that for a minute. What does that mean? Our whole world, our whole window to so much of our life is constrained by a little 8 by whatever this is. That's everything there. And you're actually deriving, think of all of the meaning that you're sucking through this very, very small siphon. Okay, except when you get home and then you have, yeah. Or maybe you've got that and then you got 3 monitors and your wife is like, do you really need 3 monitors? And you're like, yeah, I do. And you're proud of it, okay? Or maybe you've got a huge monitor. But no matter what, it's still this 2-dimensional representation. It's still this 3-dimensional universal projection onto a 2D surface with extraordinarily limited communication ability. It has a very small nomenclature when you think about it. We expect Windows to do things. We expect them to drag. We have a very narrow expectation of what we're really going to get, and yet we're so happy with it. So what does it mean? Yes, already a question? So you were, oh, okay. It's like, hi, how you doing? That was exciting. I thought, wow, I've given so much information, I have a question so early. So as my colleague Marius was saying, I have never handled the aforementioned product. You know, but geez, I'm streamed, aren't I? Is that what I am? I'm streamed? This is live? Let's just say I have been looking very deeply on the whole array of, what, you can't hear me? All right. The whole array of augmented technology. I've looked very deeply at the development of the Oculus. I've looked deeply at a lot of things out there. It's our job at Infusion to always know what is critical and what is important, and more or less, what does it mean if these things catch on? And we are on the verge of a tremendously exciting and important era of living within our apps, of augmented reality, which means the ability to project things in 3-dimensional space and move through them. That is really exciting. Have you guys seen, for example, the advertisements for HoloLens? Raise your hand if you have, just so that I can get a sense. Okay. Wow, actually, most of you guys have not. So I will talk through this just because if you haven't seen it, it's certainly, or actually maybe I will not do that because I do not know which of my magical desktops is primed accordingly. All right, imagine if you will, a man in a kitchen with amazing things popping up everywhere in 3-dimensional space. He has his communication with his spouse, who is in a distant land on the wall. He has in the middle of the kitchen his complete day outlined in 3 dimensions, sitting in the middle of the counter. He has all the iconography and instrumentation of his life spread throughout this environment, and he is living the future the dream that we've all had. This is not just advertising, this is actually real. This is really happening. I have used technologies that have this capability, and I know that they are coming, and they're coming soon, like real soon. So the purpose of my speech is twofold, well, threefold. One, to convince you that it's coming, big change is coming, and this means, number two, we have got to think differently about our skill sets and the technologies and the tools and the things that we know how to do, because we're on the verge of a very big jump that I believe will impact you in every category. How many folks here are technical professionals, developers, or are artists? Okay, so you're the right people. So what I am telling you is there is a profound jump about to happen that's going to change the technology that you're going to use. And I want to give you my impression of what that jump is, what technologies are going to be important. And the third thing I want to talk about is what makes a good augmented reality or virtual experience. That's really important. What's a good one and what's a bad one? How can you avoid the mistake that every new media makes? Have you ever heard that phrase? Every new innovation or new form of media, the first thing it tries to do is absolutely emulate the one before it. Have you ever heard that saying? Yes. Well, if you haven't, I came up with it. It's my saying. That's not true, but you know, I might as well, except I'm streamed, so there'll be a million people. No, you didn't. Okay, I didn't. Or did I? And it's true, if you remember the web in the very early days, and you're all old enough to at least remember the web in the early days, aren't you? I mean, you know, you were kids and I was a kid also. But the first thing that web pages did, if you remember, is they tried to be books or magazines. Like they looked like a book or a magazine, and the actual paradigm was you would turn pages in a lot of cases, or you would just scroll down like it was a big piece of parchment, and it was very much tried to be, it didn't have its own thing. Compare that to the web today and the type of idioms. Do you know the word idiom? You know, I'm always so impressed when I speak to Polish speakers because you guys speak better English than any of us do. You get more subtleties, you have more, so I feel funny, like I feel happy if I can find a word you don't know. But an idiom just simply means it's a term in art or whatever. For example, a drop-down list box is an example of an idiom, right? It's not something that you came out of your, you were birthed understanding that a little box with a triangle opened. You learned it, but once you learned it, it becomes common in any place that you see it. For example, I always find it funny, your little save icon on your toolbar is a little old floppy disk like this. Right? And my kids don't know what this is. It's very funny. What's this? What's this? I don't know, Papa. This is all we had. This is what Dad used to walk around and, you know, move his wizardry from one computer to the other with. Is that too old a reference? Probably. That's an idiom too, that there's a save icon and it's a picture of a disk. Even though the disk doesn't mean anything, it's an icon, it's an idiom. So we're on the verge of some very, you know, today when you look at the web, phenomenally sophisticated, elegant idioms, you don't even think about things like swiping, you know, you have expectations. Have you ever, as I have, embarrassingly, kids will do it naturally, but as an adult you shouldn't. I was at a restaurant the other day and they gave me a physical menu, you know, which had a very few amount of things on it, you know, the appetizers, the whatever, had a nice bound thing, kind of looked like a tablet. It was a light menu, and I immediately attempted to scroll it to get the menu to, this really happened. I tried to scroll a physical object. And don't act like you've never done the same, or that's not your instinct, right? So I'm scrolling this thing, I'm like, wow, these are idioms, these are powerful. We're on the verge of some fundamentally new ones. So I want to, first of all, I want to tell you what I think the technologies are that are important for us to know about and to master, and just show you briefly a couple of these. I want to tell you in our experience and also the experience of a lot of technology providers who are coming out with three-dimensional augmented reality devices, what they are saying in terms of best practices for applications. And when you design these things, the do's and the do-nots of that. And the third thing, which is also the first thing I want to do, is I want to tell you why from this to this is not a small thing, but a huge exponential jump. And I want to prove to you that it is because of our neurology, that this is going to, for once, technology is going to align not to a small almond-shaped part of our brain that processes logic, but to the huge part of our neurology that process space and vision, and what possibilities that's going to really open up. Now, when I say vision, I'm referring, of course, to the vision we see. We are visual creatures. Do you know how much of your neurology and your brain is dedicated to vision? Any idea? 90%. How much? 90. I have never heard 90. I don't think that's quite true. It's true on what? I couldn't hear because he's so far. Oh, it's true in driving a car. Well, I'm not asking the question how much of your brain ultimately is involved in the processing of the vision that you see, but rather the raw decoding of vision and mapping. Why don't I just give you the answer that I have prepared? Well, and of course you can make arguments either way, but typically it's regarded to be 30%. 30% of your neurology, 30%. So, you know, roughly 1 pound of the 3 pounds of matter you have is dedicated to vision. Think about that. And by vision, it's not just that's red, that's blue, but I'm here, the space is here, my feeling in the space is whatever. And if you do not have optical vision, if you rely on another sense like hearing or touch or whatever, you still use all of that neurology. It just provides your inner vision and gets rewired to your other senses, and you still have a mental map of the world that is just as rich. So vision just doesn't mean optics. Vision just means where and what am I and everything in the universe, right? However that comes into you. That's 30% of your brain that's dedicated to that. So I have kind of a fun thing I like to do to prove this to people, and it's just a fun little bit of history. It's called the method of loci and the power of vision, as evidenced by the fact that the vision comes and goes. Now, if you see it coming and going, you're a very special person because that did not flicker at all. I'm just kidding, it did flicker. But some of you guys are like, really, that's fascinating. What experiment is this? Since 30% of your neurology is dedicated to vision, or if you don't like the word vision, spatial reasoning and spatial stuff, this is a fun thing to do. Have you ever seen a memory champion? Or did you ever hear about that guy, that Russian guy, Solomon Cheryshev? Or I think Cherishevsky? You ever hear of this guy? He was a guy that could memorize everything. They did studies on the guy. He wasn't smart. He wasn't a genius. Okay. But you give him Homer, he can memorize it. You give him any string of arbitrary numbers, he can memorize it. You give him anything and he's able to memorize it. People have been fascinated by super memory. Well, it turns out that we now know how super memory works. How it is that you can memorize a fantastic amount of information and what the process of it is. It's called the method of loci, and it shows you how important your visual part of your neurology is. So what I want to do, if I asked you, if I could give you an 18-digit number, let's say pi, right, 3.14. There's competitions where people try to get as many versions of pi as they can. What if I told you that I could teach you how to memorize, say, 18 digits, an 18-digit number or extension to pi, and I could actually teach you a method, and you could prove to yourself that the method would work? Would that be exciting for you? Yes? No? Not really? Yeah, it would not be that exciting. Already I remember all of these things. It's exciting to me. So it's just a fun little thing that goes to the power of vision. So you ever hear of a memory palace? Okay. Some of you guys have, some of you have. But the concept of the memory palace comes from ancient Greece. There was a poet named Simonides, and I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. My ancient Greek is not awesome. Have you ever heard of Simonides? No? Do you want to hear about Simonides? Well, I'm not convinced that you do. I do not sense. Alberto, do you sense excitement that they want to hear about Simonides? I'm sorry, that's such a cheap trick. I need you. I need you to, give me a little energy and a little love, especially you, man. Okay, I need to feel. It's helpful if you just nod, like, yeah, all right. So it's a fun story, but it's tragic. So Simonides was at a party in ancient Greece, right, with his good friend Scopas, who was a Greek sculptor, and you can still see some of Scopas' stuff around. So Scopas is having an incredible party in his house, and he's got all of these very noble people over, and it's really, really great. And I don't know if Simonides was having fun or not, but Simonides gets called out because he's in a dispute with a guy that will not pay him for his poetry because he didn't like it, right? So some messengers from this other guy come, they go, hey, Simonides, there's a couple of guys outside who want to talk to you. And he's like, fine, Scopus, I'll see you in a little bit. And no sooner does he walk outside than the building of Scopus collapses and crushes all of his guests and him in a fiendish way. Because, you know, they built things out of what? Stone? So this is not a light collapse. If something collapses on you in ancient Rome or Greece, chances are you're done, right? So everybody is crushed beyond recognition, okay? And they asked Simonides, oh my gosh, who was in there? Who was in there? And Simonides like, my gosh, there were so many people in there, I don't know how I'm going to be able to figure it out. And then he came upon what is now called the memory palace, which is the basis of super visual memory, taking advantage of the 30% of your neurology, which works like this. It is very difficult for you to remember a stream of numbers or arbitrary facts. If you don't know your credit card number by now, and most of you don't, I think that proves the point. Basically, we can deal with 7 numbers, roughly, and then it gets really rough. Because that part of your brain, I have heard, is the size of a walnut. The part of your brain that processes a lot of our mathematics and symbolic stuff is a very, very small gateway. Whereas the part of your brain that processes vision is a big, huge one. So what Simonides did is he basically said, there's no way I could analytically, programmatically remember these people, but if I imagine myself at the party, physically moving myself through the room, paying attention to the chair that was there, and really bringing the whole palace back of the room, and I try to imagine not the abstract data, but myself moving through space, what I saw in the context of where I saw it, maybe I can recreate the people who died at Scopus's party. So he walks around the table in his mind, sitting still, and goes, oh yes, Arturus, you know, so-and-so. I don't actually have enough Greek names to make them all up. So Bob, Harry, Tom was there, Maria was very drunk. You know, he goes around the table like that and he gets it all right, and he's able to identify all of the people at the party, and it was a lot. And that was a great relief to the Greek authorities that promptly stole all their property, I imagine. But that was where it comes from, and today, that's how it works. So if you want to remember something, you want to remember anything, okay, I'm good time, all you have to do is you have to find your own memory palace. Okay, and a memory palace is only something that you know really well. Like, take your childhood home. Can you envision your childhood home? If I say put yourself in the kitchen of your childhood home, could you do it? Okay, and if not, put yourself in an apartment or whatever you like. Now walk from the kitchen of your childhood home down the hallway or whatever is adjacent to your kitchen. You know, imagine yourself actually taking that journey. Can you do it? You can. Can you take that, can you now go into the room, which is probably a living room or something like it, off the hallway of the kitchen? Can you now walk into that room? You can? Is it clear to you? Okay, that's an example of a memory palace. And if you take an environment that you know, there is no difference neurologically when you replay something versus when you actually do it for real. Asterisk, footnote. There is probably some neurological difference between replaying, but for the purpose of effect and general stuff, I'm saying there's not a lot of difference. If you do a brain scan of you walking through your house versus a brain scan of you thinking about walking through your house, they appear the same. I'm sure there's subtle differences, but generally it's the same machinery. You fire it up. So now, here's what we can do, and I will actually do it to you. I will teach you how to do the method of loci in your memory palace, okay? My memory palace is going to be a walk through the woods. Your memory palace will be your childhood home, okay? Now, I'll explain why in a little bit, but I'm going to present to you some historical and very recognizable figures from history, okay? And they're going to be performing an action, okay? And that action is going to be on some device or thing. A person, an action, and an object. That's what I'm going to give you, and I want you to place them in your head, okay? And while you're doing that, I am going to do it online here. So the first person is Napoleon. So I want you to imagine in the kitchen of your childhood home, Napoleon is jumping on a trampoline. That's pretty bizarre. You've walked into the kitchen, you're seeing this. Maybe you call out to your parents, why is this happening? Am I on a hallucinogen? Whatever. But you get the idea, right? That's what's happening. You are very disturbed by this. So you immediately walk into the hallway adjacent to your kitchen, and there you find Spider-Man riding an ostrich right down the hallway. The ostrich is damaging the carpet, knocking the paintings of your grandmother and grandfather off the wall, the ones you like. And it's just creating a real mess in that ostrich, and there's Spider-Man on it. Who's the guy? Is it a guy in a Spider-Man costume? I don't even really know. So you retreat from that, and you go into your living room, and there is Einstein, the mathematician, the scientist, the purveyor of relativity, special in general, and he's juggling balls in your living room. You weren't expecting it. He's dressed like so, but that happened in your house, okay? That really all happened, okay? You're not going to forget that, are you? If I asked you tomorrow, well, let's actually try it. Roll back right now. What happened? Now go back to the kitchen, which was the first part of your walk into the door of the kitchen. Who was in there? What was he doing? On what? You ran out of the end of the hallway. Who or what was there? Doing what? To what? He was riding what? Yeah, big bird ostrich. You freaked out. You ran into the living room. Who was in the living room? And, oh, well, yes, I suppose I should have removed that. But I still have a hunch you would have remembered that. If I ask you tomorrow morning, tell me about that incredible thing you saw in your house, your memory palace, do you think you would still get this right? Yes, you would. If I ask you a week from now, you probably will still get, in fact, this might be stuck with you for your entire life. You're welcome. Yes, this guy's holding his hands. No, I don't have the room for this, okay? What you have just done is the precise and absolute technique used by memory champions or super memory people. Some people don't have to learn the approach because they're born with it. There's one theory that says people with synesthesia. Do you know what synesthesia is? Raise your hand if you know what synesthesia is. Oh yeah, raise your hand if you'd like to have it. Yeah. Synesthesia happens to normal people. Normal is the wrong word. Happens to average people if you take an LSD or a lot of hallucinogens. What will happen is your senses will blend. You'll hear a sound, and it will also translate to a taste. You see a letter or a number, and it has a color that will always be that letter or number. Or a certain sound or smell gives you a physical feeling, like tingling in this arm or whatever, and everything maps to something else. So people with synesthesia are believed to be primary candidates for people who will also have super memory. Because if you think about it, they're automatically creating these physical associations and visual associations with things, and they can't help it. That's what Solomon was purported to actually have done. So what's the method here? I said I was going to let you do, I said I was going to let you remember 18 different numbers. Have I done that? Okay. I have, if I can ask you to do some homework. All you have to do to prepare yourself, I'm sorry, you're disappointed. You're like, I didn't want to do nothing. It's not that bad. It's called the person action object, or the PAO, and all you have to do is you got to think of 99 people, just 99, and you do have to memorize in a conventional way a number 0 through 99 of all of these people. Could you do that? You could do that, right? Could be your parents, could be celebrities, could be whatever. You do the same for an action. You have to think of 99 objects for an action, and then map them to number, and you do the same for the object. You got to think of 99 objects, and you have to memorize in a conventional way the number for that object. And if you do that, then all you need to do to remember any series of numbers is just encode that way. I see a 22. Well, for me, that's such and such a celebrity. That's Gauss, right? And the next number I want to remember is 54. All right, that's an action. That's skipping rope. I see a 99 on my credit card that I don't remember. Okay, that's an object, that's a boat. So I have Gauss skipping on a boat. I place it in a memory palace. You will never forget anything ever again. That is the way that it's done, right? Or one of the ways that the memory champions do it. And I just show that because I find it, A, really, really interesting, and B, I find that it just goes to the sheer power of visualization and how important it actually is. So now, I want to show you some examples of what I think are visualization and augmented reality stuff that we've done that I'm proudest of, and some of the stuff that I actually don't like at all, that I think we made some mistakes on, right? So here's an example. Whoops. That's not right. Come on, play. So this was a client where you make your own teddy bear. It's called Build-A-Bear. And I want you to watch how we take the real and we put it with the visceral. So place your heart here. And you see we're linking the artificial and the real in a very tactical way that children really like. Note that when they press the keyboard, these strings vibrate. There's an action associated with them. It's tactile. They're moving through space. You know, we have people viscerally drag. This was done on a touch table. Not all augmented reality needs to be 3D glasses and that. You can do it with more conventional technologies. So I was very proud of this. What they're doing here is they're creating a heart for their teddy bear, and they're dragging in the different things and aspects of the personality of the teddy bear. Isn't that cute? I want him to be sporty. I want him to be happy. I want him to do these different things. So I think that's a good example. Here's a fun one. This is where we're using augmented reality to go deeper into something. What? All right, imagine, if you will, a teddy bear on, yeah, what happened to my screen? I did? I didn't do anything. You might have to be my teddy bear.
No, not in public.
If anybody was going to be my teddy bear, Bartek, it would clearly be you. I'm sorry, Marius. You Bartek. You both have the beards. I will. You both have the big, magnificent, you know. Do you know, never mind. I'm going to stop. All right, imagine, if you will, a teddy bear lying on a device. You know, I take the teddy bear. Really? I'm really not going to get video, huh? It's not.
Expressive dance, maybe?
Okay. So what this is a teddy bear. A kid brings their teddy bear, you know, warm, cuddly bear, and they place it on an actual screen. The screen responds to the fact that there's a real teddy bear there. Lights up, and then they get a special kind of scope that they put on the device, and they can drag over the silhouette of where the bear was, and they can see its heart with all of the personality and the stuff that they dragged into it. And the kids respond to this magnificently. When we put this in the store, the percentage of increase in sales was 30%, right? That's significant of just how powerful that kind of augmented technology is and what the potential of it is. Oh, we got it? Ish? Okay. Oh. All right, next thing. Imagine, if you will. All right. Well, then let me actually jump ahead, and I'll sort of finish where I. So all this technology is really terrific, and it's great, and you want to do it. The stuff I wanted to show you was the augmented reality stuff with the helmets. If we get up there, we'll, but I can sort of jump ahead a little bit. What technologies do you need to actually partake in this incredible jump and transformation and universe which is coming upon us? Any ideas? Would Xamarin do it? Is it Java? Is it .NET? Is it C++? Is it what? What's the technology we should all really endeavor to learn, you think? Any ideas? Assembler? That'd be awesome. You know, in 500 years, you would eventually have, nope, I'm going to jump from your register to someone else's. What technology is it? Do you know? Do you want to know? What? Windows CE? What? No. All right, I'm just going to tell you. The answer, my friends, and if I can leave you with one thought tonight as fellow technical professionals, is it is about game engines, okay? Game engines. There are two big ones that are important. One is Unity, and one is Unreal. Are you familiar with these gaming engines? Okay? Get more familiar if you're not, and all these things are free now. So Unreal is free, Unity is free for the most part. Start looking to build your games and engines, because the applications that are powered by the 3 dimensions and moving through space are guaranteed to be 3-dimensional applications, and they are built as video games. They are not built as traditional apps. So that means that you have to understand programming in a video game context in 3-dimensional space. And these games are the way to do it. So you should really be well advised to work it. And if you're a designer, understand and learn the workflow of creating 3-dimensional assets and putting them in these games. That's another really important component to it. And so those are really the two most significant things that I would tell you. And I want to make sure that you used your memory palaces. Go into your kitchen and put a couple of names there. One of them is Unity, right? and one of them is Unreal. Either of them are good. They have different, the Unreal is good if you don't want to program, or you can't program, or you're not interested in programming. It has a completely visual way of putting a game or an application together called Blueprint, which is astonishingly good. Unity requires that you code in C# at least, okay, or JavaScript or other things. So that is another option. Unity is more mature. It has a huge app store and a marketplace for things. Unreal, not as much. But Unity is not, in my opinion, as sophisticated as Unreal is in terms of rendering and these sorts of things. So, yeah. Well, I think the combination of my time, sadly, coming to an end, and a PC that I cannot actually display for you all that I would like, I hope that I have visually entertained you, and I have occupied the 30% of your mind that is so important, and that I've also given you a skill that will irritate your spouses, that you can go home and start practicing, which is that memory palace. But mostly, I would leave you with this message. Just understand that we are on, in my opinion, a very critical jump into a fundamentally new era with new tools, but a hell of a lot of new possibility and excitement that you can take advantage. It's a really, really fun time. So I hope you'll take advantage of it, and I thank you very much for your time.